What this means for the energy sector is that it's going to be harder and harder for these companies that find oil and gas in the United States to move those commodities to market. You know, they used to think, oh, I just need to hit this big oil field and then I'll have it made. Now it's not just about finding the oil. Then you have to deal with activists and politicians and hundreds of other stakeholders just to get that oil out of your oil field to somewhere that it can be used.
These decisions, I think, really harm the industry's ability to plan its business. 10 years ago, if you were in the midstream business, which is the pipelines, you knew what compliance meant. I think that the Dakota Access decision in particular, but also the Keystone decision, really diminish your ability, if you're an executive at a midstream company, to plan your business. Because now, do you really know what the rules are? I'm not sure you do anymore. The thing to understand about all of these cases is that they're all a part of the strategy of keeping it in the ground, or at least that's what it started out as, in which they first tried to outlaw hydraulic fracturing to prevent the production of gas and oil from shale plays. Well, that didn't work out. And so about 3 years ago, they shifted strategy to trying to prevent the product from moving to market. So the next leg of the strategy is to try to shut down the midstream part of the business, the pipelines, deny the ability to build these pipelines and move the product to market.
As we see more and more of these keep it in the ground protests that have the effect of slowing pipeline development, we really could reach a point where this oil does stay in the ground because it just becomes too difficult to get it to market economically. At the prices that we're seeing right now, $40 a barrel for oil, there's not a lot of incentive for these companies to go after the more difficult barrels. In Canada's oil sands province, for example, we're seeing the shutdown of lots of output. Hundreds of thousands of barrels a day of oil production is being shut in because the operating costs are too high for them to make a decent profit.
I think you have to look at the decisions in the context of the moment in time that we find ourselves. 5 years ago, or 2 years ago, even 1 year ago, it probably would be more likely or not that the oil or the natural gas might just move a different way. But what we're talking about right now is creating the space to allow new sources of energy that we need to power our economy to fill the gap that reliance on fossil fuels and these pipelines leave.
Even though a few years ago, the industry would have said, oh, you know, don't listen to these guys. We rely on oil and gas to keep the world going round. The reality is becoming more complicated.
If you look at the clean energy economy right now, it is truly an economic powerhouse. The clean energy economy is employing 3 times the number of people in the fossil fuel industry. So we're past the tipping point. I mean, we have made this shift in our economy. And you know, of course, you have to address what's happened recently as a result of the pandemic. There has been a loss of jobs in the clean energy economy, but with investment from public and private funds, these jobs can come roaring back. And these are the jobs of the future. You know, we need to help the workers in coal, oil, and gas, but not just prop up the companies that continue to rely on energy sources that aren't the energy sources of the future.
I think some people want you to believe that you can replace coal-fired power plants solely with solar power and wind power. And you really can't do that because those are still intermittent sources of power. They have not developed the battery technology, the storage technology yet, that allows them to store the energy and use it when the sun's not shining or the wind's not blowing.
So if we don't have oil and gas pipelines to move oil and gas from place to place in the United States, we're going to need to build more high voltage power lines such that we can move electricity where it needs to go. We might have the technology whereby we no longer need to generate electricity by burning natural gas. Instead, we're moving more and more towards solar and wind power and other alternatives But you can't just generate that electricity from wind turbines in the middle of nowhere. You need to get it to market somehow. So this becomes ultimately a policy debate for the United States. Do we want more of these below ground pipelines, or do we want more above ground high voltage lines? For a while anyway, we're going to need one or the other. And that's the hard reality that we deal with now.